So, good evening, everybody, respected seniors and dear colleagues. I've chosen this topic because it's a relatively new field which we are entering into in our country. Contrast echocardiography. Contrast has not been widely available, but for the last 2 years it has been available, and we started using it and have been now routinely using it for the last 1 year. Every day in our routine echocardiography and stress echocardiography. So I thought this will be a very good topic to share with echocardiographer colleagues. So this is meant to be just an introduction to basics of contrast echocardiography. Some of you may already be very well versed. So it just seems like a basic topic. There are of course many more details which we can go through later on. So contrast echocardiography is now becoming an integral component of echocardiography practice. And according to the ASE guideline paper which was received in 2018, early on it was just a consensus statement which appeared almost 10 years before that in 2008. So a huge amount of information accumulated in the 10 years intervening between 2008 and 2018. This happened because there was a black box warning issued by FDA in the use of contrast in the US because of certain suspicious adverse effects and deaths which were attributed to the use of contrast. And large number of randomized control trials, multi-center as well as single-center case reports, a huge amount of data was accumulated, and subsequently in 2018 they came out with a guideline paper recommending widespread use of contrast echocardiography because it was shown that it is extremely safe. Besides, a new term has now been proposed, which we use as ultrasound enhancing agent, UEA, so that we are able to differentiate it from the other contrast that we are using, like iodinated contrast, gadolinium chelates, or even bubble contrast. So when we say ultrasound enhancing agent, this is what we mean. We are talking about contrast echocardiography.
So can I interrupt you for a second? Sorry, I think the voice is not clear. Everybody is giving this feedback.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yeah, it's better. Yes.
Okay, I'll move forward.
Thank you.
So as I was mentioning, in the last 10 years, between 2008, where this FDA warning, black box warning was issued because of fears of some deaths happening due to the use of contrast, over the period of next 10 years, a huge amount of data was accumulated. Large number of multi-center trials were done, single-center trials were done. There were large registries. I'm going to share them with you, based on which it is now clear that it is extremely safe, and we can use contrast in most clinical scenarios like stress echo, pulmonary hypertension, which was one of the relative warnings early on, even right to left shunts, in critical care, acute settings, and even in pediatric patients more than 5 years of age. Besides, the new change that has been in the guideline paper issued by the ASE in 2018 is that now they use the term ultrasound enhancing agent, so that we differentiate them from other contrasts like iodinated contrast and gadolinium chelates or even bubble contrast. So the new term for UEA is now for contrast echocardiography. Besides, very importantly, it has been now shown that the use of early on, if we are able to use ultrasound contrast or UEA, it is demonstrated to improve patient outcomes also. There is a very robust data which showing that we are able to reduce downstream investigation and even able to impact the outcomes of the patient if we early on resort to the use of UEA in echocardiography practice. Besides, it may appear to be expensive, but overall it has been well demonstrated that it turns out to be very cost effective in a wide variety of clinical settings. So these two fears have been allayed: extremely safe, cost effective, and even results in improved outcome if we use it early on in our patients. So broadly, there are two categories imaging techniques based on which contrast echocardiography is practiced. One is what we call LV opacification or contrast echo, and the other is myocardial contrast echo, myocardial perfusion imaging, which we are able also to do with contrast echo. So it is now a very rapidly emerging modality. We are very excited about the use of myocardial contrast echo, but as of now, it is not FDA approved. These are the two clinical settings in which contrast is used for LV opacification on the left, which is FDA approved, widely being used. We are also using it at our center. We have a huge amount of database with LV opacification, and almost all the ultrasound vendors are having software which enable the use of LV opacification in their machines. Myocardial contrast perfusion echo is not yet FDA approved. Most of us who are using it as a research tool or off-label use, but it is very rapidly emerging, and soon we may have indications, valid indications, where we can use it in situations like stress echo, chest pain and emergency department, and for differentiating intracardiac masses into different categories. I'll briefly touch upon these, but mainly it is currently an off-label use for which these are being used. A brief word about contrast before we move forward. So what is this contrast after all? This contrast, which we get in wires, consists of small gas-filled microbubbles which are encapsulated by a synthetic shell. It is sized in such a way that it is able to pass through all the capillary beds of the body. So this is the beauty. The main difference is that it is even smaller than the red blood cells. Here I've shown that the average red blood cell size is 5 to 8 microns, while the microbubble that is available in this most of the contrast vendors is less than 5 microns, less than the size of the RBCs. Besides, some of the contrasts do contain albumin, human albumin, but some of them don't contain any other blood product, and they do not contain iodine, radioactive material, gadolinium, or anything else. So they are engineered in the laboratory, consistently sized, durable microbubbles. And from vendor to vendor, it depends. The gas which is filled in the microbubble is different, and the shell is different. So the microbubble typically consists of a shell and a gas. The gas is generally a high molecular weight but low solubility gas, which has highly stable and high persistence in the bloodstream. Besides, we have a shell which is flexible, which stabilizes these microspheres and which impacts microbubble performance. It is made of either proteins or phospholipids. And then the size, which is a very important factor to enable it to pass through the microcirculation, the capillary beds of the system. Besides, they are manufactured in such a way that the size is consistent throughout the solution that we have. They are similarly sized microbubbles and not much variation in sizes permitted. So these are the three commercially available agents. These are the brand names: the Lumasun, Definity, Optison. Lumasun in our country is available in the name of Sonoview, while we also have Definity available. We have been using Definity only. So we have our experiences with Definity, and which I'm going to share with you. Most of my images are with Definity, which is containing the microspheres of the size 1.1 to 3.3 micron. The shell is a phospholipid shell, and the gas is octofluorobutane or perfluorine gas, which is similar to Optison. And the only contraindication you can imagine is allergy to perfluorine. Other than that, there is no contraindication to the use of this contrast agent. Extremely safe, demonstrated in large number of studies. What is the principle behind use of contrast? So when we are doing routine echocardiography imaging, we know that the blood pool appears black and the myocardium is made to appear echo-prominent. So RBCs are very poor conductors of ultrasound. They are poor reflectants of ultrasound. So the blood pool is largely seen as black in color, while the tissue or the myocardium is seen as echo bright or whiter in structure. While contrast is contrast to this. We make the blood pool appear brighter while we try to suppress the echo impulses coming from the myocardium or the neighboring tissue. So a contrast is created between blood pool and the tissue. So here, please remember that the blood pool is going to appear white while the myocardium or the tissues are going to appear black. So this is the reverse of what we are routinely tuned to doing in echocardiography. And this happens because of the micro bubbles that we have designed in such a way that they are able to backscatter ultrasound waves, and they end up resonating when we transmit an ultrasound wave of a particular frequency. The microbubbles resonate at frequencies that are used in these ultrasound machines, and they oscillate with the pressure of the ultrasound wave. They compress and then they expand when the pressure is lowered. And based on this, they are also generating acoustic waves. And because of this, we are getting a reflected ultrasound wave, which is much more prominent. Unlike the blood pool, which is usually black, we get a blood pool which loaded with contrast, which appears very much prominent, very much white. So there are some small amount of physics, if you can go through it. An ultrasound wave that carries ultrasound energy. The ultrasound energy which is carried by ultrasound wave, we label it as the mechanical index, or it is an index of the power carried by the ultrasound energy. So at a low power, it is a linear oscillation, while as we go on increasing the ultrasound power, the oscillation goes on increasing, it becomes non-linear, harmonics are produced, and ultimately if we have high power ultrasound waves, it will result in disruption of the micro bubbles. They no longer will be oscillating, but they will immediately burst, releasing large amount of ultrasound scattering energy, and then there will be disappearance of all the ultrasound. So this is also used, bubble disruption is also used, and we call it as flash imaging. I'll come to that. So this is what happens. The signal obtained from the ultrasound is transmitted. The machine, we have settings available on most vendors, as I mentioned. We can choose the preset setting of LV opacification, which will automatically shift us to lower ultrasound energy. Besides, we also can manually adjust the mechanical index, which is also available with most vendors. The mechanical index, just for information, is directly proportional to the peak negative pressure, while inversely proportional to the square root of transmitted frequency. The ultrasound settings are done in such a way that they either modulate the amplitude of the alternating ultrasound pulses that are being sent out, or they adjust the phase of the ultrasound pulses that are being set subsequently in such a way that the tissue reflections are cancelled out and the blood reflections coming from the micro bubbles are enhanced, further increasing the contrast between the blood pool and the tissue, which results in very good contrast image. Differentiation between the demarcation of the endocardium or the endothelium is very well appreciated, and that is the value of contrast in demarcating the tissue and the blood pool, clear delineation of the endocardium. So these are a few terminologies we should be familiar with. On your left, we have mentioned as VLMI is very low mechanical index, LMI is low mechanical index, intermediate mechanical index, and high mechanical index. So most of the LV opacification imaging is done in very low mechanical index, which we should be choosing to be less than 0.2 MI on our machines. Here the microbubble oscillation is asymmetric, so fundamental and nonlinear acoustic signals will be produced, which will be very useful for producing large amount of contrast enhancement. So we will get a very bright image from the blood pool, which will help us differentiate it from the myocardial pool, which will be blacker in appearance. At the lower bottom, high mechanical index is also used. Once we shift to high mechanical index, it will result in disruption of the bubble. Immediately a very bright echo will be produced from the blood pool, and then since all the bubbles have disrupted, there will be black pool will be appeared in the form of blood, so which is also very useful in the form of flash imaging. I will discuss that later on. So it clears myocardial contrast. So we generally use VLMI. Sometimes in some imaging we use low mechanical index, and sometimes we use high mechanical index where we want to do flash imaging. So our instrument settings we should be familiar with while utilizing contrast. Although just by choosing the preset LV opacification on our instruments, most of the presetting will be done. But generally, the basic ultrasound principles should always be kept in mind. Power output or mechanical index, we should know where the buttons are. We can reduce the mechanical index. It's one of the most important settings, as I mentioned. Minimum depth required for optimum imaging. gain settings should be optimal, focus should be on the area of interest, and in terms of contrast, also the injection speed is very important. In case we are doing bolus injection images, which most of us are doing, for LV opacification, bolus is the easiest form of injection. So injection speed is also an important factor. So these are a few examples. If the gain is too high, like you see in this image, it will result in less differentiation, less contrast between the blood pool and the myocardium. The whole of the image is very bright. While if we have too low gain settings, we will be getting dropouts in our image, particularly the basal segments will not be so well appreciated. So depth should also be adjusted. So only the LV is in the view. We are not concerned with LA. So we can reduce the depth accordingly. And this is an example of an optimal gain setting. So we can clearly appreciate this image versus this image. There's clear demarcation between the myocardium and the blood pool. The endocardium has been clearly delineated. So a little bit of gain settings is always useful, apart from the focus settings and depth settings, which we are all aware of. Only the area of interest should be in the focus, and the depth should also be accordingly minimum required. There is an example of impact of the rate of administration. When we are using Definity in our lab, we're generally using the bolus injection, which is prepared beforehand. So generally, we say that the speed should be in such a way that the entire LV is uniformly opacified. So here, there is optimal opacification. You can see from base to apex, there is uniform opacification of the left ventricle. While here, the most of the contrast has been shifted towards the apex. We are not able to clearly differentiate the middle and the basal segments. This happens because of too rapid an injection speed if it is being exercised. While if the injection speed is very slow, this is the result. The swirling of the contrast will be seen in the left ventricle opacification. Again, not a good quality image. So once we are using contrast, a little bit of practice, and soon we are all experts. We all will be able to get these kind of images. From all these images from our own lab, it is a very shallow learning curve, I should say, a very steep learning curve, like we are able to pick up very quickly by trial and error method. And of course, it is very, very safe. So no problem with injecting again and again the small amounts of contrast to come out with the right amount and the right speed. So this is how we prepare Definity. This is available in 2 ml vials. And this is the requirement of Definity, that it needs to be constituted or agitated in this vial mix machine, which is available with the vendor. So every morning we take this vial, we put this in our machine, and the vial is prepared. It agitates for around 2-3 minutes, and then it is reconstituted. The whole solution appears homogeneous white solution. Then we withdraw around, say, 2 ml of this solution is withdrawn, which is mixed with saline, and then we prepare our injection. And then in every patient we are injecting around 0.2, 0.3 ml of this saline mixed contrast. With one vial, we are able to do, say, 4-5 patients of stress echo and even 10 patients of echocardiography images if we require. So in our country, cost is a major constraint. You're not able to use one vial for one patient as would be the norm, but you're quite comfortably able to use it for as many as 5 to 10 patients each vial. For stress echo or for routine echo, we are able to comfortably use it. And the cost of each vial in our country is around 9,000 rupees. So these are the 3 options available with Definity. We can use it either a diluted bolus, which I just mentioned. This is our routine practice. This is what we are doing. Besides, we also can use it as an infusion, which we have no experience with. This is very useful for stress echoes, but even for our stress echo, we are using a bolus injection just before each stage of the vitamin stress echo, or just before peak exercise in case of exercise stress echo. So diluted bolus or continuous infusion, or bolus followed by a injection of saline contrast flush can also be used. We have maximal experience of diluted bolus with us, and that is what we are routinely using. All this information is available with the package insert, which if you start using, you'll be easily able to do that. So coming to the clinical applications of ultrasound enhancing agents, very importantly, and if you look at the indications, this is as of now indicated in almost all the echocardiography studies that we are doing, and we can use contrast in almost every echocardiography study that we are doing. The only reason we are not using it routinely is because of the cost, I believe. If you have large volume of cases being done, then the cost can also get absorbed in terms of the volume, and we can start using it in our day-to-day practice. So the basic indications are like quantification of LV volumes, ejection fraction, and for regional wall motion analysis. In every patient, we need to do this. Doppler signal enhancement. Sometimes we are not able to get a good PR signal, and it is important to know the RV systolic pressure. Or in case of aortic stenosis, sometimes the signal is not clear. We are not able to, even the alignment is proper, but we are not getting a good quality Doppler signal. Even then, to enhance the Doppler signal, you can use contrast and get a good quality signal. Where it is not visible at all, it becomes visible in cases of PR, or it becomes better in terms of stenosis like aortic stenosis, where you want to get a good quality signal. A very interesting use is in suspected intracardiac masses. It is being used to differentiate a thrombus from a tumor from a benign variety to a malignant variety also. There are very good papers which indicate that we can, to quite an extent, differentiate tumors from being benign to malignant with the use of contrast. There is a very good use of contrast in hypertrophic cardiomyopathies at all stages, even routine hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Now it is a valid indication to use in all patients of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy in order not to miss out apical aneurysm and sometimes an apical thrombus, which may be present in cases of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Apical hypertrophic variant, as we all aware, is best delineated with the use of contrast only. Besides, non-compaction is now defined based on contrast use apart from MRI. So we should be using it wherever we are suspecting non-compaction cardiomyopathy. And we have picked up some patients in our lab who are not clearly suspected of having non-compaction just based on routine 2D echo images. But when we use contrast, we could label them as having non-compaction cardiomyopathy. Besides, a wonderful use is in stress echocardiography for LV opacification also, for seeing each and every segment very clearly. Besides, perfusion imaging, as I mentioned, is coming as a research tool, which is showing a very good sensitivity for picking up ischemia. In terms of perfusion imaging also, we are now competing with perfusion imaging markers like radioactive nuclear imaging. So these are future uses. But LV opacification stress echocardiography we are using routinely and which can be used quite easily. So I'll share one by one these indications with you. For LV volumes, ejection fraction and regional wall motion abnormality, we are aware. This is one of the first points in our echo reports that we are supposed to comment upon. What are the dimensions, what are the volumes, and what is the ejection fraction? In patients of coronary artery disease, what is the wall motion abnormality? We are severely limited by suboptimal endocardial imaging for this particular indication. It limits the diagnostic usefulness of echocardiography, and we have wide variation in ejection fraction being reported by people because we may be using eyeballing, we may be using Simpson's method. Results are suboptimal because we need to see the endocardium excursion very clearly to be able to look at ejection fraction and wall motion abnormality. And we are not able to see it clearly without the use of contrast. So it results in a lot of misdiagnosis, low diagnostic confidence. You need additional tests. Inter-observer, significant variability is known to occur within the same lab, and significant intra-observer variability is also there, which severely impacts the patient management decision. Besides, the volumetric decisions are to be made based on the cavity measurement, which we make by Simpson's method, but we end up not visualizing clearly the trabeculae. We are not able to see apex clearly. Often foreshortening is a big problem with 2D imaging particularly. Besides, there can be lung artifacts, there can be noise interference. So ultrasound enhancing agent, or contrast echo, is clearly indicated when we cannot see at least two segments adequately. So this is a valid indication. We should be able to use contrast when we are not able to see adequately any two segments. in our 16 segment imaging. So this is a valid indication, and we should no longer be reporting as suboptimal imaging, a poor acoustic window, image could not be visualized adequately. We should go ahead and use contrast in such scenarios. So here is an example. We can hardly see any part of this is a parasternal long axis view. We cannot see any part of the anterior septum or the posterior wall. The segments are not clear. But we need to come out with wall motion abnormality. We need to generate a report. We need to make the dimensions. And here is after injection of contrast, very clear delineation of endocardium. You can see the wall motion clearly. You can make the measurements in this image and come out confidently with wall motion reports also. So ultrasound enhancing agents should always be used wherever LV quantification is very important for management decisions and prognostication. We are all aware. Ejection fraction 30-35 versus 35-40. There is a huge difference between mortality and the indication for devices as well as heart failure indication. So it is very important to come out with a clear value for ejection fraction as well as volume. Besides, very interestingly, once we started using ultrasound enhancing agents for volumetric analysis, ejection fraction, we knew that UVA derived volumes are larger and they correlate better with MRI derived volumes, which are the gold standard. So ideally it is the norm. It should be volumes and ejection fraction should be derived based on use of contrast agents only, because when we are doing 2D imaging without contrast, we are going into the tropicality and we are not clearly delineating the endocardium, so we end up underestimating the LV size. Actually, the size is larger than we are seeing, which is clearly brought out when we inject contrast. Even if we are using Simpson's method, this holds true. Simpson's with the use of contrast gives us a larger LV as compared to a Simpson's, because we are manually tracing the endocardium which we are seeing with a naked eye in both these views. But with the contrast, we are going deeper because endocardium is now clearly seen. So we end up having larger volumes when we use contrast. So maybe in the future, we will have values based on the use of contrast, which will be larger for a normal left ventricle. A very important indication is regional wall motion abnormality in most of our patients of CAD, very commonly needed, which remains a subjective tool. Even now, we have very few quantitative facilities available. Most of us don't have it. So it remains a subjective assessment of regional wall motion analysis, and there's no gold standard for it. We need to see both epicardium and endocardium clearly to be able to define the endocardial exertion as either akinetic or hypokinetic or dyskinetic. So contrast is a very useful tool in this scenario. It has significantly improved our interpretation of regional wall motion analysis, and in most of the studies, it has agreed with cardiac MRI-based wall motion analysis. There is an image you can clearly see in this. If you are not able to appreciate on a 2D image, there is a thrombus sitting in a basal segment. We did not suspect it at all. Apart from wall motion abnormality, the cycle region, there is a thrombus at the basal segment at the base of the mitral valve, which was only visible to us after we resorted to the use of contrast in this particular patient. Had we not injected contrast, we would have missed this plot completely because we were not suspecting and we were not seeing anything in the basal segment. So reminding you once again, UEAs should be used when 2 or more LV segments cannot be adequately visualized for analysis of ejection fraction and regional wall motion abnormality, or the study indication requires a very accurate analysis of regional wall motion. It's a class 1A indication. UEA should be used in all patients in whom quantitative assessment of ejection fraction is important for prognosis or management of the condition. All our patients of heart failure, for LVAD, for ICDs, it is very important to define LVEF quantitatively. You should resort to the use of this contrast. Very interesting use is in terms of intracardiac masses, and we need to differentiate whenever we see a suspected mass from a normal variant like a false tendon, a false cord, accessory papillary muscle, heavy trabeculation, a non-compaction, from a pathologic structure like a thrombus, tumor, or a vegetation. So again, contrast is a very handy in these situations. In LVO specification images, they appear as a filling defect and we are able to use it. Besides, as I mentioned, we are able to use perfusion imaging in this scenario also for vascularity differentiation. And we are able to differentiate a thrombus from a tumor versus a benign tumor from a malignant tumor. So, for example, in this, you can clearly see very black image, no perfusion at all, no microbubbles have entered this structure. So this is clearly a thrombus which you could make out. Besides, it was sitting on an akinetic segment and apical area. So this was clearly a thrombus. As compared to this mass, which was a myxoma, and when we image this, we could see some microbubbles perfusing this because there is some vascularity present in this structure. This is not as black as a thrombus appears, and this was a myxoma. So here is an example. You can see clearly thrombus has a jet black structure in contrast to blood pool, which is clearly white, and myocardium, which is well perfused also here. While a myxoma is slightly grayish, somewhat vascular, while a malignant tumor is highly vascular, so you can clearly see perfusion of these microbubbles happening within this tumor also. Not as much contrast is there from the myocardium as we would have liked, and this turned out to be a malignant tumor clearly. This was our patient which we saw in our lab, tumor on the right side of heart, unlikely to be a myxoma, not a common site for myxoma, commonly suspected in left atrium. Could have been a thrombus, again very unlikely possibility. So we did flash imaging. You inject contrast at low mechanical index or very low mechanical index, and then you go to high mechanical index, you do flash, where you can appreciate flash happening in this very bright image. And then, so this was flash, the whole image goes white, and then we look at reperfusion happening in this tumor, which indicates that this is a vascularized tumor because the contrast reappeared to the blood vessels which were present in this tumor. So it could have been either a malignant tumor or a benign tumor. Because it was on the right side, we needed this differentiation, and this we labeled it as a query tumor, query malignant, and it was confirmed subsequently histopathologically to be a benign tumor only. So flash imaging could help us differentiate it from thrombus, at least in this scenario. So this is an exciting use which we can resort to, differentiating thrombus from benign tumors and tentatively from malignant tumors also. Besides, it is very useful in hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. For apical hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, there is no way other than using contrast to clearly demonstrate apical hypertrophy as opposed to basal and mid segment. For follow-up, for detecting aneurysm formation at the apex or thrombus formation at the apex, contrast should always be used, otherwise we will miss out on these small apical aneurysms that occur in these patients. We are also able to use it in non-compaction cardiomyopathy, but just a word, we use VLMI. Higher than VLMI is recommended for non-compaction cardiomyopathy. Either low mechanical index is the best modality. For post-MI complications, for assessment of right ventricle, for APA, for LA appendage, you can use it for all these situations. There is an example of our patient where we could not clearly differentiate apical hypertrophy. It appears as though there is wall motion abnormality at the apical segment. But once you inject contrast, there is clear difference in these two images. You can clearly appreciate that what we were seeing was most of it is myocardium, and this is not cavity. Cavity ends here, and this is apical hypertrophy happening here, some of which is also perfused. So this is an example of non-compaction. Once we were using low mechanical index, we were not able to see trabeculae very clearly. But with a higher mechanical index, we could clearly differentiate the recesses and the trabeculae, which correlated very well with MRI, and we could diagnose these patients as having non-compaction cardiomyopathy. Routine use of this for delineating all the myocardial segments clearly is in stress echocardiography, as I mentioned. improve the endocardial border. We have to interpret wall motion very quickly. We cannot afford to have uninterpretable images. The contrast is routinely being used for exercise echo as well as dobutamine, but it has been studied in all forms of stress echocardiography. Even bicycle ergometry data is there. Even dipyridamole perfusion imaging data is there. So has been studied in all forms of echocardiography and stress echo and recommended. It is also known to be cost effective because we end up having fewer downstream investigations and we have clear images, more accurate interpretations. So fewer downstream investigations are required, which end up saving the cost of the patient. Here you can see there is a clear image of each and every segment from base to apex is clearly delineated in this image, and we can confidently report our stress echocardiogram to get these kind of images. These coming to the end of the discussion, moving to the myocardial perfusion echo, just a word about it. As I mentioned, this is not routinely being used, not FDA approved as of now, but some of us are using it off-label for stress echocardiography. For example, this is an indication where we could detect stress echocardiogram which was negative, even with the use of LVO contrast. But when we looked at myocardial perfusion imaging, we could detect subendocardial ischemia with the use of MI imaging. So these are exciting prospects in the future where we will be able to do this perfusion echocardiography, and we will maybe compete in terms of perfusion imaging with other modalities, which will be very cost effective if we can do this by echocardiography. This is a basic principle. The ultrasound contrast, as I mentioned, is able to perfuse all the capillary beds. It also reaches the myocardial capillary, which we destroy with the use of flash imaging. So no contrast is seen in the myocardium, and then reperfusion occurs because the ultrasound which was destroying the bubbles, later on the contrast bubbles re-enter the microcirculation of the myocardium, and the reperfusion kinetics are imaged, and based on these reperfusion kinetics, we have algorithms available with the software, based with the help of which we can diagnose delayed perfusion, which could be indicative of hibernating myocardium or ischemia or subendocardial ischemia. So this will be routinely available in future, and we hopefully all of us will be using it. A major concern, a major question which is often asked is regarding the safety of ultrasound enhancing agent, because wherever we talk of contrast, we think of iodinated contrast, which is fraught with side effects, toxicity. We think of gadolinium, lesser toxicity, but still some concerns. But here, ultrasound enhancing agents have been shown to be remarkably safe. There is a huge amount of literature available which supports the use of ultrasound enhancing agent in almost every possible scenario other than pregnant women or children less than 5 years. So these are currently the only limitations we have. Other than that, it can even be used in patients with pulmonary hypertension, with a right to left shunt, with a level of evidence 1, level of evidence B, and based on non-randomized data, because these were the reasons, PH and right to left shunt, which led to the black box warning. But now 10 years down the line, we are very confident that we can use it even for these indications. And this is just a snapshot to give you confidence, the number of studies that we have and the number of patients that have been studied with this. For example, if you look at this column, the UAE patients in this particular study were 5,200 patients. In this particular retrospective study, 58,000 patients compared with 42 lakh patients in terms of controls. Where we have 78,000 patients using contrast compared to control patients. So huge amount of data is available in terms of number of studies, prospective as well as retrospective, which are available. All kinds of these three agents which we are using, and all kinds of scenarios, acute setting, emergency room settings, stress echocardiogram. So more than a huge amount of study have been undertaken, and we are now very confident that these are very, very safe and no increased risk has been demonstrated in all kinds of settings with these patients. Commonest side effects which have been reported are headache, backache, flushing, which is also transient, in around 0.05% of patients, which is very less, and very rare anaphylactic reaction has been reported with the use of Definity, and 0.006% of patients based on all the studies done till date with Definity. So UA use within 24 hours of hospitalization has also shown to reduce mortality. So this is the outcome data that I was talking about. And this is based on registry data. You can look at this number of patients which were looked at to come out with this data, and clearly it has outcome benefit also. So there is a encouragement to early on use of ultrasound enhancing agent to improve feasibility, accuracy, reproducibility of echocardiographic studies for qualitative as well as quantitative assessment of cardiac structure as well as function for resting echocardiograms as well as stress echocardiograms. Any modality of stress that you are using, they have been studied now. So this was one simple study I chose to quote, where it was shown that 632 consecutive patients which were labeled early on as either uninterpretable or technically difficult studies, even in the hand of experts from OPDs, wards, ICU, which were later analyzed with the use of ultrasound enhancing agent. So the percentage of uninterpretable studies reduced from 11.7 to 0.3%. Technically adequate studies became 1.6%, rose to 90%, became technically adequate after that. Additional diagnostic procedure was not needed in 32% patients if we used contrast. So these are just an example, one study to show the importance of ultrasound enhancing agent and the remarkable safety that we have with it now. So to summarize, there have been significant developments over the last 10 years with the use of ultrasound enhancing agents. We have now established safety beyond any doubt. There is efficacy which is proven in endocardial delineation. For LV opacification, we can use it. It is very cost effective. For LV opacification is currently the only FDA approved indication in cardiovascular disease, but off-label use for vascular studies, pediatric study is in fact being allowed by the guidelines. And there is extensive literature support backing the use of ultrasound enhancing agents in day-to-day echocardiography practice. So coming to the future potential uses, very exciting uses that are being looked at. There could be used in skeletal muscle perfusion for peripheral artery disease. We have a few images which we did in our patients with the use of demonstration of plaques and aneurysm in patients of aorta where graft endoleak was suspected, and with the use of ultrasound enhancing agent, we could demonstrate the leakage of contrast and we could pick this up. Quantification of plaque burden in carotid ultrasound is being used as a research tool. For plaque activity also it is being used. For femoral artery pseudoaneurysm, again it has been used, and we could also be using contrast for carrying our molecular imaging markers. We could be riding on these contrast bubbles, and we could be using this for molecular imaging in the future. So very exciting times coming ahead, and something a therapeutic use of chronothrombolysis is also being talked about in myocardial infarction, but we are very early days to talk about that. So thank you very much, dear colleagues, for the brief discussion about the use of ultrasound enhancing agents. We have a year's experience of extensive use of this modality in our lab, and we have a large amount of patients which we've already done for the last 1 year, and we've hardly had any adverse effect with the use of these contrast agents. If there are any questions now, I will be happy to take them. Thank you very much, and stay safe, stay indoors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That was indeed a very intense presentation and a lot of learnings. I've been taking my notes as well. So thank you so much. And Indresh, are you there? So maybe I can start with the first question that came in very in the beginning itself. Just Give me 1 second. So in the meanwhile, can we also take the question that came from Dr. Vinod Vijan?
Sure, sure.
So you want me to read that?
Yeah, please.
So the first question was, could you send me your experience with stress GLS along sonicated contrast during a stress echo, and any useful links for normal teaching? Is that what contrast the low mechanical index may not make it feasible to do tissue tracking, but there is some work to contrary. And in brackets, he's mentioned Roxy Senior theme binder.
Yeah.
Should we be performing? Is it useful?
Yes, it is a very, very good question. Very, Dr. Vijan, I know, using. So, and we tried using along with strain. We did use machines, but again, you very rightly said, it doesn't track. Tissue tracking goes completely haywire with the use of contrast, because here the contrast is what is highlighted, and the tracking of pixels is not easy for the software. So you need a lot of instrument settings. We have been discussing with the vendors. So they are supposed to do the instrument setting for us, and after that we may be able to use. But you're very right. Currently, with the software that we have for spectral tracking imaging, and we couple them with LV opacification imaging, it's not possible to do that, because tissue tracking becomes completely haywire, and we are not able to do that. So you're right, and of course, Dr. Roxy is a pioneer in the field of contrast echocardiography, and he did show some data with the use. They are having it, and they are able to use it. Once the vendors are able to do the adjustments for our software, we should be able to use it.
Sure, sir. So Dr. Vijan also has another question that he had sent to me this morning. There was a mention of non-contrast eco enhancement by some vendor. I won't take the name. Some software based which might do away with sonicated contrast. I could not get it. Would be obliged if you could send me or give me some information.
There was some talk of this. I also heard it, and it was demonstrated in a conference that without using contrast, we could have a reverse pooling image, like blood will become more bright and as compared to the myocardium, and similar contrast enhancement will occur without injection of any contrast agent. So yes, this is a technology which we may be getting in the future by this particular vendor. Until we have it, we are using this contrast very safely. In fact, all our fellows are able to use it within a few days. They start off and then use it in any kind of patient very safely now. So we are just limited to not using it in patients of pulmonary hypertension and right to left shunt as of now, because there was some concern early on. So we have held back on using it currently. But as per guidelines, you can safely use it even for that.
Sure. So now moving on to our next question, where Dr. Lokre has asked you to comment on how to measure coronary perfusion.
Okay. So as I mentioned, this was not to be discussed today. This was based on the myocardial perfusion imaging, and the graph that I showed. I will go back to that again. So this is how you are able to quantify perfusion. This is for the myocardial perfusion, which is not being used as a research tool. The current discussion, I felt we should familiarize ourselves more with LV opacification, which itself is in great need of propagation, and more people should start using, because this is slightly advanced, not FDA approved, not currently being used. Softwares are not available with most of us. But theoretically, the answer to your question is this. This is how algorithms are available. First, we destroy the bubbles within the myocardium by high mechanical index imaging. The software is able to see that, and then the software looks at the reperfusion at the rate at which the reperfusion is occurring. There is supposed to be a normal rate at which the contrast should refill into those capillaries. That is looked at by the software, and based on that, it is able to come out with perfusion, quantification, and the rate of perfusion, and interpretation in terms of delayed perfusion, or less perfusion, ischemic segments, or akinetic segments also. So there is a bit of algorithm based, and simple concept, but takes slight bit of reading to understand. I hope it's clear with this graph, and this is how you are able to quantify perfusion. I can explain it to you later on. I can send you links where you can read more about perfusion quantification. More of LV opacification if you have any doubts.
So the next question is, do we have to take consent of the patient while
Yeah, this is a very, very useful question. We did incorporate. So in all our consent forms, we have incorporated this consent, the use of contrast. So besides, even if you are not taking consent for echocardiograms, the safety rate is so much that you need not worry about that. For stress echocardiogram consent forms, we have included contrast by default in our stress echocardiography consent form.
So Dr. Lakshmi Narasimha has also requested for us if you can share a standard format if you have any, on the consent format.
Sure. We just are supposed to put this number that we have from the guidelines, incidence of allergic reaction. And when we are using for echo, say when we are not able to image the myocardial segments clearly, and we resort to, or we are suspecting non-compaction or suspecting a thrombus, we discuss it with the patient. Then we make them sign a consent with the use of contrast, and then you can design a consent for echo also when you resort to contrast in an otherwise when you are not using any consent form for a routine echo.
Sure. Somebody's also requested you to comment on the cost of UEAs, if you want to.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we are using Definity, which is costing 9,000 per vial for us. Since we are able to use the single vial for around 5 to 10 patients in a day, 5 stress echocardiograms, because if you are doing dobutamine stress echo at the baseline as well as at every stage you will have to inject. So we end up using, say, for 5 patients of dobutamine stress echo or for 10 of stress echo and 10 of routine echoes if you are doing. So the cost is absorbed accordingly. 9,000 for each vial of Definity is what we are looking. So by using it for greater number of patients, we've been able to dilute the cost which each patient will have to end up paying.
Sure. So again, we have a question from Dr. Lokre where he's saying, can you comment on thrombus in non-contrast echo and also thrombus versus tumor?
So this is what I mentioned. A thrombus will typically be avascular structure. So in this image, you can see this is a thrombus at the apex, completely black, well clearly in opposed to contrast opacification. While a benign tumor is also likely to be avascular, is likely to be completely black, but will have some vascularity. Although this is not a correct way to differentiate between a thrombus and a tumor. Besides other factors that we use, the location, the background information, you should be able to clearly differentiate a thrombus from a non-thrombus mass. This is what I was trying to say. Besides, you can also differentiate a benign tumor from a malignant tumor based on flash imaging. So thrombus will typically appear black, and once you have used contrast, you are more confident in committing structure in favor of thrombus. If the other features are also favoring thrombus, say it is sitting on an akinetic segment, it is on an apex, there is clear reason for it, there is low ejection fraction, then in that milieu you can further add on contrast imaging as it will further boost your confidence in labeling it as thrombus.
Okay, so what is also the amount of contrast per kg body weight that you recommend?
Okay, so as I was mentioning this, what we do is, this is the dose, 10 microliter per kg of activated Definity is what is recommended. Maximum allowable dose is 20 microliter per kg body weight, but we hardly use that in any patient. Much lesser doses are adequate to get very good quality images. So what we are using is this diluted bolus. we take out around 1.3 ml, rest is saline 8.7 ml. We make this solution and you administer 1 to 2 ml slowly in a given patient. So you can see how less in each patient we are using. The upper limit is 20 microliters per kg. So we are able to get very good quality images at much lesser doses. Besides, it is extremely safe even at the peak dose, 20 microliter. About safety, there need not be any concern looking at the number of patients that have been studied. I have not seen any modality being studied that much. The kind of studies you have in hundreds of thousands of patients with the safety of contrast.
So there is a very interesting question from Kirti Dikshit. She said, you've mentioned that UEA-derived ejection fractions are more accurate, while we have AI-based 3D tools today to help us derive ejection fraction, which is comparable to CMR. So which of the two methods you recommend to use routinely, and which is more close to?
Correct. A very interesting question, which was put up to Dr. Roxy in recently concluded European Association meeting at Vienna. So we do not have comparison of 3D versus contrast as of now. And this is what we need an answer to, whether 3D volume is the best or contrast volume is the best. Based on non-contrast versus contrast, if you do not have 3D, contrast volume is better. With 3D versus contrast, we don't have the answer as of now.
Okay, so can we use contrast in 3D heart model dynamic case of poor
No,
window?
it is not compatible. It's not compatible. You need to go down to VLMI imaging or low mechanical index, which end up disrupting the 3D. Okay, we are, as I mentioned, speckle tracking 3D currently are not compatible with contrast. Maybe in the future the vendors will have compatibility incorporated, and then we'll have those kind of images also.
So there's also a question, any role of skin test dosing prior to contrast injection, and if yes, why?
Not required. You just look at the safety data. I'm aware of doctors being more concerned with negative aspects and safety, but the benefits and even we have outcome data with this contrast image, which is the most fascinating thing I could come across, that you end up improving outcomes also, and this 0.006% incidence of hypersensitivity demonstrated is, there is no indication even in the package insert to go ahead and do skin testing with this kind of value, 0.006%. Not really required. We have been using it for last 1 year and we have done more than 2,000 patients in all, but we have not done it and we have not had a single year.
Okay, so there is this question, I think if I'm not understanding it wrongly, they've asked you to comment on extra cardiac shunts in cardiopulmonary syndrome, pulmonary hypertension, or in chronic liver disease. Should we use it?
Using bubble contrast for this indication could be used, but as I mentioned, there is a little bit of caution with the pulmonary hypertension, and since we are starting a contrast program, we decided not to do the doubtful indications or indications where some risk could be there. So we are not using it in pulmonary hypertension patients right now, right to left shunt patients right now. Bubble contrast is safely being used for these indications, and you can use it if required.
So the next question is actually correlated to, in which grade do you contraindicate contrast study in pulmonary hypertension specifically?
This is our own contraindication as per guidelines. It is also not there. You could be having caution. We may start using it even in PH patients also once we are confident. But as of now, there is no contraindication, as I mentioned. Pregnant women, children less than 5 years, this is not being studied, so this is the only contraindication. Patients known to have reacted previously to the use of that particular contrast is the other. So apart from this, I can't think of any contraindication.
Sure, sir. So in which pediatric age group do you recommend use, and what dose, any specific complication that somebody should look for?
Nothing. Children less than 5 years, we should not be using. Other than that, all wherever you need to use, you can use it.
Great. So the next question is, am I directly proportional to peak negative pressure? What is peak negative pressure?
So this is a little bit of acoustics, physics.
Okay.
When ultrasound wave carries some pressure and then there is contraction of the ultrasound micro bubble, the contrast bubble, and then there is expansion of the bubble. So a contraction wave is produced and a relaxation wave is produced. If you remember sound waves, they travel in the form of energy, which is compression and relaxation, compression and relaxation. So this is what they are talking about. If they adjust the ultrasound mechanical index, the amplitude is adjusted or the phase is adjusted in such a way. And this is mainly for the instrument setting. This happens in the background. So you can read about it from the literature, and if you're not able to understand, do not worry about it. The basic concept is that we should be using minimum mechanical index, very low MI, so as not to disrupt the bubbles and to have maximum scatter from the bubbles, to have maximum contrast produced from the bubble. That should be most good for us to understand. Most of us are not very good at physics, and I'm one of you only. Thank you.
So again, sir, something related to physics. So what is the ideal speed of injection for diluted bolus technique with DEFINITY?
So 1 ml, what we use is a diluted bolus with saline. So 1 ml injected over a period of 10 seconds. We normally have trained our nurses for that, and they have now become very comfortable injecting. They count up to 5 or 10 and then they inject. 1 ml, 10 seconds should be a good speed. But again, as I mentioned, depends on the different factors, the body weight of the patient, where the cannula is located. And you can come across with your own, each patient to patient, you can little bit of do adjustments. And if you are still not getting good image based on even after optimal speed of injection, you can use repeat doses and re-inject it again till you get good contrast image. Again, extreme safety gives us that confidence in reusing it.
Sure, sir. So the second last question we'll take is differentiation between PFO and intrapulmonary shunt. Which arm should be used, and also contrast imaging in PLSCV?
Should be injected on the left arm, the standard EP. And if you do not have contrast, even bubble contrast is adequate in that scenario. Because that is a very, you can say, no cost substitute. You need not to resort to this contrast specifically for that purpose. Bubble contrast is a valid indication for that. Persistent LSVC where you are suspecting, and the cannula should be on the left side, left upper limb.
All right, so just last question. Is it safe in pregnancy, Dr. Murugesan?
Yeah, clearly showed not being studied in pregnancy.
All right, I think, yeah, we won't hold you any further. There are a few questions I'll share with you privately, and maybe you could answer them a little later. A lot of requests.
We are all held up in our homes, can't go out anywhere, so let's remain held up in our homes only.
Stay safe. A lot of requests has come for your presentation, sir. If you could share, we could share pass on to people if they can leave their email IDs behind. Sure. Just one question came in just now. Kindly mention findings in contrast in pulmonary AV fistula. And I think a similar request was around the same question. If you have any studies that you can share with people as reference, a couple of them have also requested that.
These guidelines are incorporating all the reference that we have, published in JACE 2018 guidelines, the American Society of Echo guidelines. Regarding pulmonary shunting, if you think about this concept, this actually bubble contrast is supposed to shunt through the lungs. So it will in any case cross the microcirculation of the lungs also. So we will not be able to pick up shunts if you are looking at. For shunt detection, best is to use bubble contrast. These studies will be inconclusive if you use ultrasound enhancing agent or sonicated contrast for that indication. Just
All
think
right,
of the
sir.
concept before this question. This is going to cross the capillary bed. So in any case, it will always shunt through lungs. We will not be able to pick up shunts.
All right, so I think on that note, there's a lot of compliment that's coming your way for a great presentation. A lot of people are thanking you.